What is up, life groups? We are continuing our Immerse series today, and we're going to be talking about the book of Ruth. It is a very short book in the Bible. It's only 4 chapters. And this morning, my message, I called it "The Best Is Yet to Come." Because, as you will see in the story, even in the midst of the hard times, the best is yet to come, and God still has a plan. So, Chapter 1 starts out with a family, Elimelech and Naomi and their 2 sons. They live in Bethlehem, and there's a huge famine in Bethlehem, and so Elimelech decides to take his family to Moab. When they get to Moab, Elimelech dies. The Bible doesn't tell us how he died, it just says that he dies. So then Naomi's 2 sons marry Moabite women. One's name is Ruth, and the other one's name is Orpah. Not Oprah, Orpah. So they're married to the sons for 10 years. They don't have any kids, and then the sons die. Again, the Bible isn't specific and doesn't tell us how they died. It just says that they died. So Naomi is heartbroken. Her husband has passed away. Her sons have passed away. So she tells her daughters-in-law and she says, look, let's go back to Bethlehem. That's where my family's at, my friends. And so the daughters-in-law and Naomi pack up and they start heading back. And on the way back, Naomi says, look, you guys don't have to come. Go back to Moab with your friends and your family and have a life of your own. She says, you have dedicated your life to my sons and it has been fantastic, but they're gone now. And so I want you guys to continue to still have a life of your own. So go back. And Orpah decides to go back with much crying and grieving with all 3 of them. And Ruth says, no. She says, I am clinging to you. And she says, Naomi, where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people and your God, my God. And we see Ruth's loyalty during this time of Naomi. So Naomi and Ruth continue on. They get to Bethlehem and there is a buzz about the town of Naomi is back. And they're like, oh my gosh, Naomi's back. This is the Naomi, and I'm sure they're asking her tons of questions of how have you been? How's your husband, your sons, grandkids? And Naomi is so heartbroken. And she says, I left full, but I come back empty because what the Lord has done. And so she is just completely heartbroken because of what has happened. And so Ruth then, in chapter 2, Ruth decides to go and glean in a field. Ruth realizes hey, I need to provide. We don't have husbands to provide for us. So she goes out and gleans in a field. Now, if you don't know what gleaning is kind of the scraps of a harvest. So it's after the farmer comes through and harvests the crops. It's kind of like the crops that fall off, maybe the not so great ones, not the best of the crop, kind of like table scraps for a dog. And so this is what Ruth is getting and trying to provide for her and Naomi. And so Boaz now comes into the picture because that's the field that she is harvesting in or gleaning in. And so Boaz comes in and Boaz asks about Ruth. And he's like, hey, who is this woman? And they say, oh, this is Ruth. She came with Naomi. And people have heard of who Ruth and Naomi are by now. And so Boaz comes to Ruth and says, hey, whenever you want to drink and food, stop, just glean in my field. I want to provide for you. And Ruth is like, why are you doing this? Why are you giving me this special treatment? And so Boaz says, I've heard about you. I have heard of how you left your friends and family and came to this strange land with Naomi. And that's a big deal. That is huge. And it shows, your loyalty and your dedication and your love. And so just by Ruth's actions, the whole town notices that she's different. Boaz notices that she is different. And so Ruth then continues to glean until the evening. And then she goes back to Naomi. And Naomi says, hey, where have you been gleaning at? And she said, I've been gleaning in Boaz's field. And Naomi is like, that's awesome. He's actually a relative of Elimelech's that could take on kind of the redeeming aspect of our property and things like that. He's the next in line kin to take over Elimelech's legacy. And so Naomi and Ruth make a plan. And this plan is pretty much a plan for Ruth to ask Boaz to marry her. And so the next day, Ruth goes back, she's gleaning, and there's kind of a dinner and things like that. And so she goes to that. Boaz then goes and lays down and goes to sleep. And Ruth then lays at his feet. And he wakes up, and Ruth asks, for the most part, hey, will you marry me? And so in the Bible times, what it was is if a husband died, then the next male in line, in that family, would take on the wife, the property, everything of that husband's. And so Ruth was asking Boaz, hey, my husband has died. Elimelech has died. Will you take on Elimelech's legacy? Will you take on his property, his wife, as well as myself, and things like that? And so Boaz says yes. But there's a little twist. There is actually a man that is closer in kin than Boaz is. And so Boaz says, I need to ask him first and see if he kind of wants to take this on. So the next day, well, I don't know if it's the next day, but I say it's the next day. So chapter 4, we see, I'm kind of jumping, but chapter 4, we see that Boaz then goes to the city gate. And this is where all of the big things took place, which is kind of weird that it's a city gate. But so Boaz is waiting for this guy. We don't know his name, but Boaz is waiting for this guy to walk by so he can ask if he wants to be kind of the redeemer of Elimelech's legacy. So the guy comes by and Boaz says, hey, I don't know if you know this, Naomi's back, Elimelech's passed away, her sons have passed away, and you're the next in line to take on Elimelech's properties and land and things like that. And the guy says, well, yeah, sure. That's kind of what we do. And I'm the next kin. So yeah, that's great. And then Boaz says, but there's also a wife named Ruth that will also be taken on as well. And then this guy's like, I don't think I can do that. And we don't know why. Some people have said maybe this guy was married and had a wife and kids of his own, and he wanted his kids to be that legacy of his family. But whatever the reason was, he says, Boaz, if you want to take Ruth as your wife and Elimelech's properties, you are more than welcome to do so. So we handshake nowadays, but back then they shared sandals. So the guy took off his sandal, gave it to Boaz, and that was it. That was kind of the confirmation of that this guy was going to give Boaz the property and everything else. So Boaz and Ruth, they get married and they have a little boy, and his name is Obed. And it's super cool because in chapter 4, verse 14 and 17, the narrator really talks about Naomi and Obed, her grandson. And so it's really cool to see how at the beginning of Ruth, there was death, and it was her husband, Naomi's husband, that passed away, and then her 2 sons. And then now there is life. She has a grandson that is able to take on Elimelech's legacy. And it was all because Ruth had faith in God and trusted and followed where she felt the Lord leading her to. And so that's just an encouragement of that hope for us as well, is that, man, no matter what the circumstances, God is still in control. God is still there regardless of how the circumstances are. And that God is always going to take evil and use it for good, for his glory. And so it's just really awesome to see how the story kind of unfolds with the book of Ruth. And then Ruth is also in line in the kind of genealogy, she is in the genealogy of Jesus. And she is actually named in Matthew when they talk about the genealogy of Jesus. And so we just get to see how Ruth's loyalty and faithfulness to Naomi puts her in a place of being in that genealogy of Jesus, and it's super cool. So I just want to encourage you guys. I know the circumstances that we are in are crazy, and yours might be even crazier than other people's, but know that regardless of your circumstances, God is still present. regardless of your circumstances, that doesn't mean that God has left you. God is still here, and he is still working, and he is still moving. And so that's kind of the book of Ruth. I encourage you guys to read it yourself. If you haven't, go on the Bible app on your phone and read it in the Message version. It's really, really good in the Message translation. I've read that quite a few times, actually, just to get like the story in my head, because sometimes the Bible's hard to read, but the Message is kind of written in today's language. So I want to encourage you guys, read that. Again, it's only 4 chapters, super short, but such a great message of hope and encouragement, and just seeing Ruth's loyalty and how she was just so faithful. So have a great life group session, and we will see you guys on Wednesday. Bye.